5 years ago, Rick Osterloh, Google's head of hardware, walked into Sundar Pichai's office on his second day of work. By the time he left, the two were in agreement that inevitably mobile computer power was going to hit diminishing returns, and in order for Google to have a breakthrough and a big impact, they would have to start taking hardware much more seriously and develop their own custom silicon for their phone. In this past year, the Google 6 Pro and Google 6 have been hyped and leaked and advertised more than any Pixel in history. They are the result of that conversation. It's all been leading to this. If this phone does well, Google will be the second major manufacturer to have a hit phone that had its phone hardware, chipset, and operating system all made in-house. This is supposed to be, in Google's words, Android at its best. So, the question is, did Google finally make the Android flagship that we've been waiting for?
This is gonna be a good day.
The 6 and 6 Pro are obviously super related. They have the same design language, the same OS, the same chipset, and similar performance, but the 6 is $300 cheaper than the 6 Pro at $599 versus $899. So there are some pretty big differences that I will call out throughout the video. And the first one is the displays. So the Pixel 6 has a 6.4-inch 90Hz display, while the 6 Pro has a 6.71-inch 120Hz curved display. Both displays are HDR10 Plus capable, so the colors look beautiful, but the 6 Pro has a faster display and a higher resolution display. They both have Gorilla Glass Victus on the front, which is a little bit more protective than the Gorilla Glass 6 that they have on the back. The back camera visor is definitely the defining characteristic of this phone. It makes it look different than any other phone on the market. I love the way the camera visor looks. I think it really fits Google's aesthetic, and it also makes the phone a little bit easier to hold. The Pixel 6 also has a camera visor, but the seams around it feel much less polished than they do on the 6 Pro. Also, I want to note here that the fingerprint sensor on both of these is very bad. It kind of sucks. It's so much slower and less consistent in comparison to other fingerprint sensors. Both phones also do not pass the battery test with flying colors, so if you've watched multiple Pixel 6 reviews, which I assume you probably have, you'll notice that reviewers are kind of all over the map with what they're reporting. Some people are saying that the battery life is great, and other people are saying that it is a deal breaker. And you're probably wondering why there's such a vast array of different reports. And I think one of the reasons is because of the battery optimization that you're supposed to get with this phone. Basically, the phone is supposed to improve over time as it learns your usage habits. And I think the other reason is that these phones are definitely the smartest phones in the market, period. I think they have the most complex set of features in their software, and because of that, there's a wide array of how you can use this phone. So some people may not use any of the extra features, and then other people will use all of the extra features and kind of drain the battery. For example, what's playing is a feature that will actively always be listening to what song is playing. So that obviously can decrease the battery life if it's always having to listen. Other features as well, like always on display or what refresh rate you're using, can all affect the battery life. It just feels like there are more options with this phone to affect how it performs. For my personal use, which I would say is on the heavier side, I can make it through a day, but it's like a B+, A- battery. If my use is really heavy, I definitely need to top it off at some point during the day. It's not like the battery life is astronomically bad, but I think so many people are upset about it because they were really hoping that the Tensor chip was going to make the battery life incredible. Tensor, for those of you that don't know, is the custom silicon chip that Google has created for these phones. And one of the main things that Tensor is used for is obviously to power the camera, and I'm going to talk about the camera a lot later in the video, but I want to lay the groundwork now by giving this quick sample. And while I do it, I'm going to talk about the sponsor of this video, Oura Ring, who I freaking love, and they're actually a repeat sponsor, which is incredibly exciting for me. So while you're watching this and hearing about the Ring, make sure to pay attention to stabilization, color consistency, and exposure, because that's going to be important for later in the video. Okay, so Oura Ring is a company that makes products to help you live your best life with your health. So I actually talked about their Gen 2 ring a while back, but they just came out with a brand new Gen 3 ring. So the new Gen 3 ring does things like track your sleep, track your heart rate, track your temperature. If you want, there's also period tracking where it can give you estimates of when you're going to get your periods. You can kind of plan ahead. There's also heart rate tracking during the day, and then detailed analysis of if you're able to kind of live your best life during the day. So for example, it will look at how much you slept and how restful that sleep was, and then kind of give you estimates on how much you should work out or how you're going to feel throughout the day. And as someone that pulls a lot of all-nighters, unfortunately, to edit these videos, that type of analysis is super helpful for me, and it's making me take my health a lot more seriously. And also coming soon, there's going to be a workout heart rate and SpO2 blood oxygen sensing. And ever since I got the Gen 3, it has not left my hand. So I'm so stoked about this. If you want to check it out, I'm going to link them in the description below, and I'll remind you again at the end of the video. But this video quality on the Pixel 6 Pro, I don't know. It's a little questionable. and we'll talk about that a little later in the video, but let's finish up talking about Tensor first. This is a chip that's built to handle tons of data in real time, so the hope is that over time it will get better and better as it learns how you use the phone. Android 12 is running on this phone, and it's definitely my favorite version of Android, both in the aesthetics and the utility. There are tons of usability features like holding an app to access its widgets, sharing Wi-Fi passwords with nearby devices, and the Material You global design changes that make the phone feel custom to your preferences, wallpapers, etc. Like it will take the colors out of your wallpaper and then customize the UI to it, so it feels very aesthetic, like it all goes together. While you may not notice it at first, the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are utilizing AI features in tons of ways. Like for example, translation and word processing with Google Assistant is faster than ever, recognizing about 200 words per minute. Google says that their goal is to start using AI to build custom experiences for individual people. Like if it sees that you're flying to Seattle in 3 days and they say, hey, you should bring an umbrella. But the most tangible application of the AI right now is obviously in the image and video processing, so let's talk about that. There are tons of new features like Magic Eraser, which gives you the ability to take stuff out of a frame after the fact, and then other features like de-blurring a face that's moving quickly, which means that you'll almost never get a picture again where the face is out of focus. These features are complemented with amazing hardware. Each phone has a 50 megapixel f1.9 wide lens, a 12 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide lens, and the 6 Pro has an extra 48 megapixel f3.5 telephoto lens. That new hardware, plus Google's incredible image processing, leads to images that are questionable. I'm sure you did not think I was gonna go there. Let's talk about it because it's kind of a weird thing. I would have thought that this would be the best camera on the market, no questions asked. Hardware is great, the software obviously is great. What is to not be great? But it seems like Google is actually overdoing it a bit. So in the past, because they haven't updated their hardware, they were kind of using a little bit lower quality hardware, and the software and the processing really had to compensate by adding in sharpness and contrast and all these things. But now the hardware is so good that those same compensations feel like over processing. It feels like it's overdoing the image. Sometimes it looks too saturated or too sharp or too contrasty. It just doesn't lead to a consistent image quality. The video stabilization features that they added and that they were able to add because of the Google Tensor chip are great. For example, being able to lock onto a subject is really cool, and I think very useful if you're at a concert or a game. And the active mode stabilization is also great for running shots, although it does lower the resolution, kind of like what Samsung does with the ultra steady mode on their phones. So I think point blank, iPhone still has better video quality than the Pixels, but the Pixels have more utility and like the extra features that they offer with stabilization and things like that. The telephoto lens is definitely an improvement here, and if you really care about image quality, then the 6 Pro is the one to get. The 6 Pro really doesn't have that many significant differences over the 6. It's kind of just like amping every feature up a little bit, like turning the knob a little bit to kind of give you like the enthusiast level phone. But for the average person, the regular 6 is probably going to be the one to get because it's super affordable. It's actually so affordable that I'm wondering what's going on here, because the marketing spend is greater than ever this year. It's the most they've ever spent on a Pixel with a new custom chipset that took half a decade to make. You would think that these phones would be priced pretty expensive or the same as other flagships, but they're not. As I said, the Pixel 6 is $599 for the base model and the 6 Pro is $899, and that to me is really aggressive, enticing pricing. While there are no official documents about it, I wouldn't be surprised if Google is either breaking even on this phone or actually losing money on it, all in the hopes of getting more market dominance. This phone is obviously super important to their bigger plan of becoming a major player in the market. So, can it compete with the Apple and the Samsungs of the world? I'd say, yeah. I think there are still some areas that Apple or Samsung excels over the Pixel, but this is the smartest phone on the market. There's so many cool AI features, and Google is constantly working on more. It's been a few years since we've really had a true Android flagship from the Pixel lineup, and this year it feels like they really delivered on that. It's not a perfect phone, no phone is right now, but it gets really close. Hopefully you found this video helpful and entertaining. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out Aura Ring, link in the description below if you're interested, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks so much for hanging out. Really appreciate you.